see if I can prop this up here and get me going. Gotta have my notes. Okay. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our final plenary. And I would just like to take this moment to give a warm thank you to the FASD United team, Jan Lutke, and all of the ALC members for embracing me so warmly and bringing me into their group and inviting me to speak today. I have to admit that when I began the research for this keynote, I did not expect myself to be tumbling down the rabbit hole, but tumble I did. And I felt that in order to frame my thoughts, it was important for me to understand the historical inception and proliferation of our human rights into what we know them to be today. But as I navigated through the entourage of resolutions, declarations, and conventions, it became clear that this warren of universal and inalienable rights and the legal mechanisms that underpin them extended far beyond what I initially anticipated, and I found myself at times hopelessly lost. What I discovered was a complex and vast landscape of nuanced and evolving perspectives, changing cultural dynamics, and intricate legal frameworks that require more consideration than what I will have time for today. I believe the basic tenets of our human rights should be inherent, and if not inherent, at least accessible. Yet it quickly becomes clear that interdependent, indivisible, non-discriminatory, and equal are somewhat lofty notions in an infinitely more complex and chaotic world. Suffice to say, human rights once seemed to enshrine the most basic principles of freedom, dignity, morality, and virtue have become shrouded underneath an ever-expanding umbrella. Coupled with the proliferation of treaties and non-binding international instruments, there seems to be cause for reflection. When the duties associated with human rights require actions involving respect, protection, facilitation, and provision, does proliferation strengthen and protect with increased awareness and scope, or does it weaken, diluting core rights and reducing available resources for provisions we believe should have priority? Simply put, it seems that our rights look good on paper, but without a solid framework and sufficient resources to apply them within the context of advocacy, policy reform, program development, training, and services, too many individuals with FASD continue to be unable to access their most basic human rights. The Convention of Rights for People with Disability, or the CRPD, does provide some guidance. By moving beyond traditional models and acknowledging the social, environmental, and attitudinal barriers, it aims to clarify and qualify how all categories of rights apply to persons with disabilities. But it also identifies areas where adaptations have to be made for individuals to effectively exercise these rights, as well as areas where rights have been violated and where protections should be reinforced. Yet, despite noble intentions, understanding and implementation lag due to limited advocacy recognition, lack of social justice, as well as enduring societal models that don't accommodate the needs of these protected groups. In order for individuals to exercise their rights, we must also address the systemic inequalities that hinder equity, access, and inclusion. How can we effectively prioritise scarce resources to eliminate the barriers that hinder the provision of and access to these rights? Before I delve in, I probably should introduce myself. Hi, my name is Jessica, and in 2019, after 33 years of inexplicable difficulty, I was finally diagnosed with FASD. And I say finally because the diagnosis was hard won, taking 4 years to obtain and ultimately confirmed by a paediatrician, highlighting one of the many barriers faced by individuals living with FASD, the struggle for early diagnosis and intervention by informed and compassionate healthcare professionals. We know at the most fundamental level that someone with FASD needs access to healthcare, education, employment, housing, and social connections. That the improvement of one right facilitates advancement of the others, and conversely, the deprivation of one right will hamper that advancement and the enjoyment of the others. I am certain that everyone in this room will understand the many consequences that result from a lack of access to informed healthcare. But without this basic right, I was unable to access other fundamental rights, such as informed and tailored education. So, like so many of us here, my time in school was overwhelmingly traumatic, leaving me grappling with crippling anxiety, depression, and enduring feelings of confusion, unworthiness, and failure. I carried these feelings with great difficulty into my socially isolated and lonely adult life, and the many years required to unravel and heal from this experience remains to be seen. It is work in progress. I will never know what I could have achieved had informed healthcare and supportive education been a part of my story. But the consequences of its lack, the pain, humiliation, and shame of moving through these unsupportive models, I am well acquainted with. Limited resources and recognition of FASD as a disability, in addition to scant understanding, stigma, and discrimination rife amongst our healthcare professionals, educators, and policymakers, can easily be blamed for this lack of equity and inclusion. But we know it's just not that simple. The sheer enormity of the alcohol industry, its insidious marketing practices, gaps in regulation, and the harm these products bring to our communities remain a formidable challenge. We know there is no safe level or time for prenatal alcohol consumption, yet the irrevocable consequences of consuming whilst pregnant continue to elude mainstream media, mainstream awareness, and unplanned pregnancy and late pregnancy recognition continues to stymie prevention efforts and stigmatise women. Although I grew up and live in Australia, I was born in Canada. And I would not be standing here today without the intervention, support, and commitment of my mother, my birth mother. Despite the burden of stigma, she continues to be my champion, and I am hers. My mother's unplanned pregnancy journey and my birth story was fraught. Her rights to informed consent, as well as pre- and postnatal care, I'd argue, were criminally impeded, and she fought every step of the way, including for her right to take me home and raise me. It was not considered in our best interest, and I am grateful every day that she fought for me. In light of all the barriers that individuals with FASD and their families face, how do we harness human rights provisions in meaningful ways to aid communities to expand their awareness, knowledge, and strategies to support families living with FASD? Moreover, how do we navigate the complexities of an individual's support needs throughout their life while also fostering and strengthening their inherent dignity, value, autonomy, and agency? There's no question that I support a rights-based approach. I believe in the right to be seen, to be heard, to take up space and feel empowered, to participate fully in society, and to make my own choices and fulfill my desires, and to reach my goals to the greatest extent possible. But often I need understanding and help to do so. Sometimes a lot of help. This approach means ensuring that individuals with FASD have access to the support and accommodations they need to participate in the decision-making that affects their lives, irrespective of their cognitive abilities and decision-making capacity. However, when decisions are seen to pose a risk to health, safety, or overall well-being, we face a difficult ethical dilemma. Balancing self-determination and autonomy with safety and well-being, and especially for those with significant cognitive impairments, is no easy feat, and tension exists between harm minimisation and choice and control. What can commonly lack in these instances is a nuanced understanding of an individual's diversity of experience, circumstances, capacity, and preferences. And so often, decisions about what is in a person's best interest is not individualised or context-specific. In this respect, raising awareness around the complexities of FASD is particularly potent to promote understanding, reduce stigma, and foster an inclusive attitude towards those living with it. Through this, communities and organisations can create successful interventions and support which empower individuals to utilise their strengths, reach their potential, contribute meaningfully, and live their best life. In both my work and personal journey, I've realised the significance of education and sharing lived experience in addressing the challenges of dismantling stigma and discrimination. In Australia, great strides have been made to recognise and address the unique challenges faced by individuals living with FASD through the National FASD Strategy, which incorporates the recommendations of the CRPD and outlines a comprehensive approach involving awareness, prevention, diagnosis, support, and research. I have had the great privilege to work and collaborate closely with Australia's peak national organisations, stakeholders, and government on key aspects of the Australian approach. And in just 5 short years, we have seen significant progress. The success of a decades-long campaign for clear pregnancy warning labels on all alcohol products sold in Australia and New Zealand was followed closely by Every Moment Matters, Australia's largest ever national health promotion, raising awareness of prenatal alcohol harm. In addition, as a member of the organising committee, I was asked to address our health ministers, senators and stakeholders at Parliament House, officially launching the Red Shoes Rock initiative in Australia. I'm a proud member of several advisory boards which include health promotion, education, diagnosis, alcohol policy and regulation, and I was the first individual with FASD to speak at Australia's National Brain Injury Conference. Prior to my diagnosis, all of this was unthinkable. I was broken by years of confusion, illness and shame. And I want to make special mention of our National Organisation for FASD, as well as the FASD Hub Australia and the Foundation for Alcohol Research and Education. Through their understanding of FASD and commitment to embracing the ideals intended by the CRPD, I have been embraced and scaffolded to unlock my skills and offer my best, enriching my life and hopefully the lives of others. I know there is still much more work to be done, but together I believe we can break down the harm and minimise stigma. I remain steadfast in my advocacy for the recognition and rights of individuals with FASD globally, and as we move forward, let us continue to work together towards a society where rights of individuals with FASD are not just acknowledged, but fully realised. I don't know about you, but I think it's time that the world sees less of our fight and much more of our light. Thank you very much.